I'm recording in beautiful Seattle, Washington, talking to horrible, horrible Edinburgh, Scotland. Two places that are probably kind of cold and rainy this time of year. Hard to say which one's a more horrible place to find yourself. But anyway, we're having a very stimulating 10-day trip to Seattle because right now our landlord is installing new carpeting in the apartment that we will move into when we get back to Victoria. And Flemface, don't worry, I won't say anything private, but Flemface is actually considering her own options that she may move on to, shall we say, greener pastures. Is it unvegan to say greener pastures? She may not stay in Edinburgh forever. All right, that's my segue.
The exploitation of cows.
You're indirectly endorsing the exploitation of cows by using that phrase. All right, take it away.
A big thing on my channel recently has been collaboration and trying to bring the community together, my community. But I don't know if you noticed as well, but after the drama died down, because drama, be it bad, be it good, it brings people together when they can collectively dislike someone. But then when that kind of died, people almost disintegrated, and now it's very hard to find people. So
money,
it's a massive...
power, fame, respect, sex. These are the motives for why people come on YouTube and do this. Not in that order, you know.
No.
And like, look, but keeping it all the way real, like, you know. So the main thing that's disappeared is the money, right? Like you were saying yourself, like just the idea that uploading every day is going to mean that you can quit your job. People used to really believe that. Durian Ryder sold that myth. And I can't tell you who this was, but I knew a guy. He's on YouTube, but I also knew him as a real person. And he was telling me how horrified he was. He met Durian Ryder face to face with his girlfriend. And Durian Ryder was like lecturing his girlfriend about how she was going to be able to quit her job because soon she'd be making so much money on YouTube. You know, the girlfriend at that point had like a channel on YouTube that was only known to family and friends, like 50 views per video kind of thing, you know. The Durian Ryder face to face does that with people too, of really trying to preach to them. And then after Durian Ryder left the room, this guy had to sit there with his girlfriend, or I don't know, ride the bus with his girlfriend. I don't know what the situation was, but he was trying to deprogram him. He was trying to say, look, you know, it's really important that you know that stuff he told you. It's not true. You know, that's really not true at all. That's not the way YouTube works. That's not the way, you know, the revenue works. So money left the game, where the money came down to a much, much lower level than people perceived it to be previously, right? And so again, keeping this all the way real, I've been talking to different people about having a conference. So, you know, not academic, but a formal conference where we present papers we've written in Vancouver, Canada, west coast of Canada. And I'm talking to the people inviting, and I say, look, you know, I admit this is a lot of time and money and effort. And, you know, I know how it is. What's your reward for doing this? If you're not, you know, if you're not getting laid, if you don't have a girlfriend or something you want to meet up with in Vancouver, if there's not somebody you're sharing the hotel room with, it's really hard to justify the time and money to come to a conference of this kind. And I was not imagining, by the way, doing like a Kickstarter or crowdfunding to pay for people's airplane tickets, which is also very hard to justify. It's very hard to ask people to donate money so that a couple of speakers can come to a vegan animal rights type conference. I know it's done. I know it's possible, but I do find that hard to do, you know. So, I mean, again, I don't want to talk about sex as if it's something really negative. I think sex can be a really positive force in a lot of people's lives. I think people do buy airplane tickets to go to, you know, Veg Fest and other vegan events in major cities around the world because they want to find a girlfriend or they want to find a boyfriend, or, you know, I think there's, you know, human sexuality is a reason why people come on camera. I was saying to a guy who does YouNow the other day, he was talking, he did a period of time where he did YouNow broadcasting every day for 20 days straight or something. I forget the number of days, but he kind of challenged himself. And I was shocked. And my honest response was, you know, but you're married. Like, why would you bother? Like, the only people I've known who were motivated to do that much broadcasting is because they were looking for a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something like that. So, you know, money, fame, power, respect, sex, these are the things that motivate this kind of behavior. And, you know, when one by one those are taken out of the picture, then you get less and less of that. And again, remember, so look, okay, that's kind of chapter one. If you have anything to say about that, we can talk more about that. But then the other side of it that I deal with it all the time is that people otherwise find me daunting or intellectually challenging to talk to. You've been talking to me for 2 hours now or something. I don't think it hasn't been too tough for you at all. But you know, when I've offered to collab to people, sometimes people say back to me directly, and sometimes I see it or hear it indirectly. Like they say it on their YouTube channel that they're afraid to talk to me, that they think I'm going to make them look stupid or feel stupid, or that somehow it's too intimidating to collab with me. So in my case in particular, at least, that's also going on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say as well with the whole conference thing, it's entirely plausible, but that's my concern right now. Is it plausible in the vegan community context? Because when you look at recently, it's funny because you talk about the whole boxing match thing.
Right.
Joe Weller and KSI, they've got a huge community backing. They were able to host a boxing match together, amateur boxing. They at one point had 1.5 million people watching. Even maybe in the skeptic community, Sargon of Akkad, he does that whole This Week in Stupid thing. Recently, he hosted an actual This Week in Stupid in the flesh with collaborative people who joined as guests.
Right. And
it's just like these things can happen in almost any community.
I'm going to give you another example on a very different scale. So we were just in Nanaimo, Canada. Nanaimo is a small town, or anyway, it's definitely not. It's a small city or a big town, whatever you want to say. But this is a small community. Nanaimo, Canada, officially has 3,000 Chinese residents. Perhaps the real number, because a lot of people are living there unofficially, is closer to 7,000. And they have a Chinese language newspaper. And I believe that newspaper has at least 3 full-time employees, maybe 4 or 5. I didn't ask the number. I've been to their offices. They have a physical bricks and mortar office. I was over here. I've been to their offices. I met their editor. And when I walked out of there with my girlfriend, I said, why don't we as vegans have this? Whether in Victoria or Vancouver or Glasgow or anywhere in the world. We suck as a community. We're a failure. And we kept on failing. So out of the 7,000 Chinese people in Nanaimo, how many of them care about that newspaper, a Chinese language newspaper? Maybe 300. It's just not everyone's going to be interested. And I've seen their stats. They don't have a huge number. They have advertisers who support their existence, who really pay for the newspaper to exist on paper and on the internet. And I am certain those advertisers do it partly out of a sense of community spirit. Partly they're paying to advertise their service, but I think they are aware they're paying for a kind of community paper. They're not, they could be advertising somewhere else. I think there is a mix of charitable motives and community building motives. And these people have a newspaper. Again, you've heard my video on community or what have you. Sky's the limit, people. Obviously, I think a boxing match is attainable. Obviously, I think a conference is attainable. In my case, a court case was attainable. I got $6,500 to this court case. Obviously, people selling T-shirts is attainable. But, more really is attainable. And so, just think about how special that is. A Chinese language, it's only in Chinese. There's no English. Not for Vancouver. Not for Toronto. Not for New York. Not for Los Angeles. For Nanaimo. For the Chinese people of Nanaimo. They have their own newspaper with an office and full-time employees, right? What is the global reach? What is the significance of people who'd be interested in a veganism? Let's say it's a veganism and ecology paper. Like, let's say you don't just do veganism, you also do some kind of scientific articles and update articles about deforestation and ecology. Well, or you could define it another way. You could have a veganism and anti-war publication. I know one group in Taiwan that got a lot of attention to that. A lot of people who are vegan are also anti-war. So you could combine vegan message with news and politics about current ongoing wars and how horrible they are and their body counts. To have a kind of pro-peace vegan. Anyways, what do you think the market is for that? I think it's more than 7,000 people. So we suck. Okay, that's my point here. We are a failure. We've been failing for 50 years, and we keep on failing. And yeah, and it's really a significant example in contrast to any of these things. Yeah.
No, it is funny that you bring up buildings, because I remember in Bristol a few years ago, that by the train station there is this building, and I think they supply renewable energy. But when it's a glass building, a business building, but inside it has loads of trees, and it also has a massive tree house.
Yeah.
And I just jokingly said to my friend, one day I'm going to have a building like that. I'm going to have a building like that. It's going to be filled with vegans, networking. And she was like, do you really think, though, the vegan community would actually go in that building, that you'd manage to, get 50 plus people in there? Right. I was like, currently probably not. Like, they're not, it's...
Well, it's a real interesting question to ask, because, I say all the time, like, vegans are fractious and fragmentary. Like, how much do we have in common? How much do I have in common with Fully Raw Christina? How much do I have in common with Durian Rider? How much do I have in common with you, for that matter? But, there are a lot of deep gulfs. But then you look at a newspaper with that, how much do Chinese people have in common? There are really deep divides within the Chinese community. They don't even all speak the same language. Like, some of them are from Fujian, they speak Fujianese, and some of them speak Hakka, and there are several different languages involved. Politically, some of them are pro-communist, and some of them are anti-communist, and some of them are sitting on the fence. There are really deep divisions in this. Some of them are pro-American, some of them are anti-American. These are big questions in the air. And yet you manage to have a newspaper for them. It's a real question. What's possible now? And look, you're talking to the right guy about this, because I say all the time, I'm all for outreach, and I'm interested in starting my own charity or my own nonprofit to do, outreach, education, and lobbying, direct government lobbying on vegan issues. I'd like to get that rolling here in Canada. But most of what I've done with my energy in the last 3 years has not been reaching out to non-vegans. It's been reaching out to other vegans and saying, look, guys, let's organize the vegans we've already got. Let's do something positive with the manpower and talent, we already have. And the results, are shockingly close to zero, right? The results are close to zero, except for what you already mentioned, the drama and the way in which, you hit the nail on the head. That's why I didn't comment. The way in which hatred of a common enemy drew people together. Right, which is a very dark but very real aspect of civilization. I remember a political science professor once saying that back when Margaret Thatcher was in charge in England, she was the Prime Minister of England, he hated Margaret Thatcher, and he spent all his time and energy criticizing Margaret Thatcher and writing articles about how terrible Margaret Thatcher was. But he said the moment Germany invaded England, he would have become the world's most ardent supporter of Margaret Thatcher in a war against Germany or something, So he was recognizing his own hypocrisy this way. The hatred of a common enemy that does seem to, galvanize people and draw them together that way. And it's nothing to be proud of. But on my channel as a microcosm, we've gotten to see exactly that contrast, right?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you how difficult it is to get people to collab on ideas. I've got this very easy framework where it's, look, I have all these contact details. You send me a video of your topic of your choice. I will edit it, put something over myself, and give it back to you, and you can use it. And the number of people who have done it in context to how many people actually see my videos, because I understand not many people do, has been shockingly low. And that's a very, look, all you have to do is film this, give it to me, and I will deal with it.
Right.
Like, I'm literally, I'm making content for them in that sense, or editing content for them, and still it's hard to get them to be like, oh, what do I even want to talk about? Like, just like, there's so many things to talk about. Like, we've just been here for 3 hours.
Right? Yeah. Well, a lot of people first discovered my channel back when I tried to collaborate with Vegan Revolution, aka Josh, in making a welcome home video for Vegan Cheetah when he just got out of jail. Rehab, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I saw you. Yes.
So there you go. That's how you discovered my channel. So that he just got out of rehab. And Josh blew his deadline, and Cheetah was already out of rehab, and there was no thing. And I got his permission. I said, look, can I have your permission to edit together the clips I've already got here and do this? Because it's too late. The guy's already out of rehab. This is supposed to be a welcome home thing. And Josh said, yes. I can screenshot that if you want. He did give permission. And then 24 hours later, he took back his permission and said, no, I shouldn't have given you permission. You know, this is terrible. This is a betrayal of my artistic vision, all this stuff. So, you know, that was a hilarious example of attempted collaboration gone wrong. And most of the other people who collaborated, they never heard anything back about that. They're like, well, I contributed to this. And then Vegan Revolution somehow bungled it and it disappeared and shit, you know. Anyway, and I know that one did. It did have a big positive emotional impact on Charles Marlowe, Vegan Cheetah, back then when he was being a normal human being instead of a cartoon character. And he really thanked me. It really meant something to him. Then he started watching my channel, and it went from there. But yeah, you know, I think the other lesson you've got to take from looking at, say, the last 3 years on YouTube, we're seeing this right now with Joey Carbstrong. Almost all of the vitality in YouTube is an echo of what's going on in old media and traditional media, you know? So the same way somebody like Gary Yourofsky or somebody like Freely suddenly had a huge surge in public interest, that really was tied to the fact that Gary Yourofsky did television interviews and that Freely had a series of mainstream newspaper articles about her, you know? That drew in, you know, a lot of attraction, a lot of interest, a lot of action. Now, that's not the only factor, but we've just seen that right now with Joey Carbstrong. I remember when he was a nobody. I remember when he was a Durian Rider clone. He was in Thailand the same time I was when I had my conflict with Durian Rider and so on. You know...
yeah, I remember him being very angry. It's like a different person.
I know.
He's changed a lot.
Yep.
I remember him being very rude and sassy.
Yep, and you know, he tried and he believed in that stupid, you know, high-carb, low-fat diet. He did Durian Rider's diet. He gained a bunch of weight. He got tubby. He got a pot belly on Durian Rider's diet, you know, riding his bicycle and eating 15 bananas a day or whatever, you know. He gained a lot of weight doing that, and then he had to lose the weight. He's slimmer now.
Certainly gone in a bad direction now.
Right.
But he's gone. Yeah.
Right. Bottom line, you know, the energy behind his channel is because of mainstream, you know, media recognition, even if it's critical, even if it's negative. Yeah. And that's a lot of what we've seen in YouTube. So, you know, other things have changed. There are other lessons you can draw from it. But that's another one of the big ones, right? Is that a lot of what we're doing is playing in the shadows of conventional media or old media. Or, you know, I know it's nice to think of YouTube as creating something new, but the sense in which YouTube is something new is a lot more like video email. It's like if I just put up a video on YouTube, that's really like sending an email to my friends and family. And then I can email them and say, hey, watch my video on YouTube. And my friends and family can watch it. But moving beyond that to actually having an audience of thousands of people who want to see your content, that still relies very heavily on old media, whether it's newspapers, radio, or TV. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of the problem with vegan YouTube is it's extremely fractured. Mm. Like I didn't, like I have the VDDS and we try and, you know, hone each other in and keep a tie on everyone who's in it and keep a tie of the content thing. That's why I do my highlights thing every week. And I think that's a massive issue. We're so fractured and unwilling to talk to each other. Oh no, because this person believes in a certain thing, and that's the thing. As you said, you know, I would struggle to have anything in common with Fleur or Christina or most of the vegans, and that is a blessing and curse of veganism itself.
Right.
There are so many different reasons to be vegan that you will end up with so many different vegans. But so. It being a curse as well as a blessing, you have to put that aside and be willing to be like, okay.
So given though that you've now had this experience in the last year, because I remember when your channel was much more just monologue centered, it was just you giving monologues, and then you really put your time and energy into collaborating more with people. And you know, I kind of had my period doing that. For me, it took a long time for me to get the first person to collaborate on my channel, and he was British. The first guy to appear on my channel was Violent Vegan, who's really kind of faded from the scene now. But, you know, and before that, people were really afraid to talk to me. I think, you know, another example, I don't know if you caught this example, but, you know, when I talked to Jason Pizzino, a.k.a. Henya Mania's boyfriend, he's also really faded from the vegan scene now, but at the time he was really well known because he was Henya's boyfriend. When Jason came on my channel, I wasn't trying to insult him or punk him or make him feel bad. But he was living in Israel at the time, and he did not know the word Auschwitz or what the significance of Auschwitz was. That was obvious, and a lot of people were really laughing at him, like, oh, like Eisel made you look stupid. So I think a lot of people were kind of concerned that talking to me, I'd somehow make them look stupid or make them look politically foolish, which is, it's not why I'm on YouTube. I'm just saying it's not why I'm here. It can happen. It happened with Jason, but, it's not like I was trying to make that happen with Jason. I just assumed he'd heard of Auschwitz before, especially given that he was living in Israel at the time. But anyway, let me ask you this. Looking ahead, next, say, 2 years, what do you think is the best possible scenario, and what do you think is the worst possible scenario? What good can come of the energy you put into collaborating? Because I think, based on what you've said, you've seen the good and the bad of it so far, right?
Yeah, well firstly, I'd say, with people, just combat what you first said, the approachability is a massive issue. I didn't collab for a long time simply because I was a spectator and completely forgot that I could actually talk to these people, and they weren't untouchable. They weren't these special people who, were above, but there was this kind of idea in the vegan community with some others that, this is my life. I'm one of these elite vegans, and you can't talk to me because I'm not going to talk to you back. But that's not the image at all. Actually, there's a lot of people willing to talk, and then they're like, oh yeah, this is such a good idea. Why haven't we done this before? And it's just like, I don't know. But I think, to answer your question, the worst thing that can happen is, I've seen it now, over trusting.
Yeah.
Because we're in groups now, and I see we have a group chat that constantly is growing. And I've given myself some details about where I work, and and I'm like, oh damn, I should have done that. But you get this kind of idea that these people are kind of your family, and I felt that with the VDDS. But every day it's growing, more people are coming in, and they're assuming a part of a group, and it's just like, maybe the worst thing that could happen is people going their separate ways, and resenting the entire group as a collective rather than just the individuals in it. But I think the best thing that can possibly happen is collectively growing, because one person, audience member, sees you, and then they sees the whole group. You're growing together, having a larger reach, and then being able to maybe even afford in the future, if you have your merch and stuff, be able to afford to actually come together and meet each other in the flesh, and have conferences. And
I don't know if merch is the way to do that, but one way or another, get support. But look, I think I can go you one better. You might think at this point, I'd mentioned the example of Durian Rider, but I'm not going to. I think in terms of the dangers of collaboration, it's interesting you said being overly trusting. I think my experience with Josh, with Vegan Revolution, is a kind of really negative, really important example that way. Because, I pointed to you, there was a time when Josh was my friend. He talked to me about personal life stuff, my family, and he talked to me about his personal life. I didn't know his name. He was just Vegan Revolution, but he talked about his struggles with depression and, his education. He was a former filmmaker and stuff. He was a friend of mine. And over something completely trivial, over that Welcome Home Vegan Cheetah film, he flipped to become my arch nemesis, which I gave him no reason to do. I sent him an apology, and I made an apology video. I said, look, I'm sorry, and I understand this is your position and so on. And I offered to take down the video, and I did take down the video, and he said he didn't want to take it down. I put it back up, whatever. But, he, for how many years? For at least 2 years, he was on a constant campaign to defame and denounce me, to say that I had no right to see my own daughter, that I was somehow a terrible parent or an abusive parent, that I was an abusive husband, to make up lies about my divorce from ex-wife. And he actually got in touch with, he phoned and spoke to my ex-wife, trying to get dirt on me. And he collaborated with Durian Rider in trying to publicly defame and denounce me. Now, he didn't come up with anything. I mean, you heard my conversation with him was on my channel. In the end, he had nothing on me. It all came to nothing. But you had a guy like that, and, making YouTube comments. I saw them in written form mostly. I have also heard him verbally, on his podcast. He's suggesting that I'm employed by the CIA to destroy veganism from within, this kind of thing. But I mean, for like 2 years, you have someone like that obsessively trying to destroy you. Look, I'm now 39 years old. Did it upset me? No. And that's why I offered to talk to the guy. I had the podcast with the guy. I gave him an opportunity to send positive. But that's the real warning. You can have that experience. And I think most people would find it more upsetting than I did, especially if the person formerly was your friend, right? And long story short, Cheetah is similar. There was a time when Vegan Cheetah really was my friend, and then he flipped to being my enemy in a very cartoonish and insincere way, because he thought he'd get more YouTube views out of it or whatever. So I think that's really the warning. And we're fractious, we're fragmentary, we don't have that much in common. But I mean, this comes up with, I mentioned this to my current girlfriend, Melissa, a lot, where I say, look, remember, I mean, in some ways I'm a snob. Some ways I just don't want to spend with people. I don't want to spend time with people that I consider stupid or useless or bad for the vegan cause. But on the other hand, I've really made an effort to reach out to some of these people, some of these crackpots, including Charles Marlowe, Vegan Cheetah, and what have you. I've made an effort to overcome those barriers. Another example is the Light Twins, right? That goes way back. I reached out to...
Oh, yeah, they disappeared a long time ago.
Yep. The Light Twins broke up. They broke up. I mean, they're now the Light Twin, singular. There's only one of them. But yeah, they went nuts and broke up. And that guy's obviously now into some really weird, alternative spirituality and stuff. But, those are guys I don't have a lot in common with. But we recorded one really good podcast together. And, I talked to them about their work history and educational history. Talked to them about life. I was really willing to reach out to and work with those people for veganism, for the cause, for the future of the movement. And this is where I'm at after 3 years of that or something, depending on how you count it. I think my YouTube channel is past 4 years now. But, it's pretty negative, and I think those are really the warnings about the downside of collaboration. I don't think anyone else is going to have the same kind of problem I had with Durian Rider. But I think that kind of problem that I had with Josh, you can have again and again. And the internet is not running out of, obsessive haters, whatever you want to say, the obsessive anti-fan.
I don't understand the psychology behind it, because I've had one run-in so far in the, 3 years I've done YouTube. And that came about because I saw them talking to someone else in a certain manner. And I was just like, no, I can't keep talking to you if you're going to talk like that to people.
Yep. I know the guy you're talking about, but yeah.
Yeah, it got very nasty, and to this day, he's still trying to get in touch with, the BDDS group as well, and trying to get in, and he just doesn't understand how to speak to people. It's very confusing, but that whole situation was so exhausting. I genuinely thought that his threats were true, that he was going to hack me, that I had to change all my passwords. To this day, I have lengthy passwords that I can't remember just to keep people out. And, I had to call the police at one point. And it's just a very real thing. I didn't understand how there were people who could do this on a regular basis. Like, look at Charles, for example. There was a long time when people were calling up him and giving him death threats. And I was just like, how could that be your life? Isn't it easier to just collaborate with people and talk about ideas and debate, values rather than scream at each other? I don't know. Very baffling to me.
Yeah,
exhausting.
Yeah, different people are playing different games by different rules on the internet. What are you trying to win, and what are you trying to lose, and what are the rules you play by? And kind of nobody agrees to those rules before they get involved in this, and people do get their hearts broken, and it does have really negative, impacts in their lives. But the other side of it is, I think this is especially true of vegans. Maybe people who are video game fans, this is true of, but it's way more true of vegans on the internet, or Star Trek fans, or some of these other specialist communities. The feeling we have of vegans, I think, is really of being alone in the crowd. You feel isolated. You feel nobody, understands you. And it hasn't come up that much in this conversation, but, we are witnesses to this, unbelievable atrocity that's happening on a daily basis. We see things other people don't see. We used to, my girlfriend Melissa and I, we used to go to the supermarket and the farmer's market in China, And, they'd be hanging the whole pig there with its head on. There'd be these pieces of meat hanging from the roof, all around you.
Oh my god!
And I would just joke to her, like, "Oh, don't you feel tempted to go back to eating meat? There's this stinking, rotting flesh with, the flies on it and everything, There were not many flies. I mean, there were a few. But, it's not teeming with flies or anything. It's this awful spectacle of these corpses. Now here in the West, in a sense, you see the same thing. In a sense, you don't. It's neatly wrapped in plastic in a little white square and so on, But I was just yesterday, we were at the grocery store together, and I was really horrified by seeing lobster tails set out on ice, and I just wondered, how can this be, how is this acceptable to people? How is this invisible or normal, seeing chopped up pieces of lobster sitting on ice that way, and knowing where it comes from and why it's there and why it's made that way. So, the reason why they sell pieces of a lobster, they'd make more money if they could sell you the whole lobster. So something happened to damage the rest of the lobster's body, in the net or in the cage or whatever. It's a reason why this one's being sold in pieces, and this one over here is selling for a higher price whole, Sorry, it's intuitively obvious if you think about it. Anyway, we see those things other people don't see, or we see them in a different way, we feel them in a different way. You have this terrible sense of being alone in the crowd and being ethically burdened by that. So we don't want to be alone anymore. And, again, even without, I mentioned before, sex, money, power, fame, even with that taken out, when I was reaching out and trying to collaborate with Josh in the first place, Josh, aka Vegan Revolution, it was for other reasons. We had other things in common. He grew up Hindu. I used to be Buddhist. We thought we'd talk about Sanskrit and Buddhism and India and Southeast Asia and stuff. I thought we had other things to talk about. But, sure, it is also that isolation of being vegan. Even if you have meat-eating friends or meat-eating family members, of specifically wanting to know other vegans and wanting to feel like you're part of a movement or part of a community or part of something. Or at least knowing other people who commiserate with you about that unbelievable burden, that horror we're all witness to. At a time when, again, I don't want to oversell it, but ecologically, there's less and less of the world that's not destroyed by human habitation, human exploitation. So, that's the situation in 2018. That's the framework. And it's easy to forget that just because so much of what gets views on YouTube, of course, is have a bikini body, feel great for the beach this weekend. But even those people, I don't want to take that away from them. Even like a complete piece of shit like Corey McCarthy, the racist bodybuilder, white supremacist vegan bodybuilder. Why do you think he came on vegan YouTube in the first place? Probably a lot of the same motivations I'm talking about here. Even, I don't know, some despicable Instagram model selling, weight loss tea for, taking photos of herself in a bikini. Even those people, a lot of those same, deep issues are there. So I don't really want to hate on them too much. A lot of the same impulses. And I'd like to think there's also a lot of the same potential to do something positive in the future.